Hey, Susan, nice to see you. Okay, so we'll just get started. Thank you all for joining. Just today, I thought I'll just give an introductory talk because there were some people who are interested in learning Sanskrit. So how do we go about learning Sanskrit? So before we start, we'll just remember our gurus. Om Guru Brahma, Guru Vishnu, Guru Devo Maheshwara, Guru Sakshat Param Brahma, Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha, Gurave Sarva Lokanam Vishaje Bhavaroginam, Nidhe Sarva Vidyanam, Dakshinamurtaye Namaha. So today is, the whole idea of today's presentation is to just give you all some kind of an idea about what Sanskrit is all about. And because for many people, it's like, oh, how do I learn Sanskrit? How difficult is it, right? And it's not a like a one-dimensional conversation. So feel free to stop me anytime and ask questions. So I've put together a set of slides to kind of give some structure to today's conversation. But essentially, it is about how do you start your own journey. So before we get into learning Sanskrit, let's understand like why is it even important? What is the role of Sanskrit, especially when it comes to India? So if you look at it, India is known to be a land of many languages, right? Right, starting from the south, where you have Tamil, Telugu, Malayalam, Kannada, and in the north, right? Right now there's Urdu also, which has got added, which was not there earlier, but there are so many regional variations of languages. And each language in India has even its own script, right? Yet, until recently, this entire subcontinent, even though it was, it had different people in terms of language and their, dressing and their cuisine and so many things, still there was some kind of a cultural unity. Okay, and that unity came because of one thing alone, and that is because the knowledge was disseminated in Sanskrit. So almost all the literate and educated in India primarily discussed in Sanskrit. So Sanskrit was the language of education, right? So you could speak Tamil at home, or you could speak Telugu at home, or you could speak Gujarati at home, or in your region. But once you made it to higher education, that language was Sanskrit, which allowed basically pollination of ideas across India. So that is the importance of Sanskrit in our culture. And if you look at it, it is because of that that almost all of our sciences are in the Sanskrit language. And also because of that, we still have a lot of undiscovered texts in the Sanskrit language. So Sanskrit was basically where knowledge was, communicated to each other. So any questions or any thoughts, observations over here? So even today, I've been told that more than 90% of our texts are still unexplored. Most of 90% of our texts are actually non-religious based. That's number one. And more than 5 lakhs, 10 lakhs of scrolls remain untouched and unexplored. So this is also largely because as people, we have stopped using Sanskrit as the language of education. It is all now shifted to English. So because quite a few people on this call, when I had set up this call, was to do with this whole GI for QC team, which is basically interested in exploring consciousness studies. I thought I'll put a little perspective on why I consider Sanskrit as the language of consciousness. So there are a few facts about Sanskrit which we will just try to understand, and maybe later on in the presentation we'll know a little bit more about it. One is that Sanskrit essentially, all of Sanskrit words originate from around 2000 sounds. These sounds are what we call root sounds or dhatus. And this sound has a universal meaning. So for example, if I say read comes, the word for read comes from a sound called patha in Sanskrit. And patha is the universal sound for read. So if I were to show the action to read, the sound for it, the corresponding sound for it would be patha. Similarly, if I would, the action for write, that corresponding sound is lik. The action to do something, the corresponding sound for that is kr. So these are considered as universal sounds, the sound which the soul understands, so consciousness understands. So that is why they say that, in Sanskrit, there's a very strong connection between the word and the sound and the meaning. So the word and the meaning are related to each other, inherent. And that's why the entire language is built out of these 2000 sounds or dhatus. Anybody has any questions or comments, please feel free to at any point of time just stop me and ask. So
yeah, just one thing, like,
yes,
so
please.
like how are we taking care of the advancement or new inventions, since these are limited to just 2000 words, as you
That
said,
is the
right?
whole
So
part. Yeah, I will answer
okay,
this
okay.
question in great detail. Okay, it's a great question, and I will answer that in a lot of detail. So right now I'm just giving you just basic background. So 2000 sounds. Okay, that's about it, and everything comes from that. And we will actually look at how these 2000 sounds create unlimited words. Okay, so we'll come to that, Rajiv. The second thing is that the sound itself is the meaning of the word. So for example, if I take the word table in English, it doesn't mean anything, but the corresponding word in Sanskrit is utpitika. So ut is slightly raised, ut means raised, pitika means something which has a flat back. So a raised flat backed surface essentially describes the table, right? So the word utpitika in Sanskrit means table, and it actually describes what a table looks like. So even if you don't know what is a table, if you are told it's utpitika, you look for a slightly raised, elevated, flat-backed surface. Okay, but if somebody doesn't know English and they were told table, and they were not shown the picture of a table, you wouldn't really know that table means this, this object. So that is a very unique piece about Sanskrit. And so Rajiv ji, one part of your question is really because of the inherent meaning of the word. When if I understand what that object does, I will actually be able to describe it in Sanskrit, and I will show you some examples little later. Okay. Similarly, certain, like for example, we have the word fire in English, right? We have many words for the word fire in Sanskrit, each of which means something different. So for example, fire in the Indian tradition is considered to be something which is very purifying. It purifies all objects to its base elements. Okay, so the word pavakaha means that which purifies. Similarly, fire consumes everything. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop. It doesn't stop at all. So stop basically means in Sanskrit alam. Okay. Analam. Okay. So anala, it does not stop. It just keeps consuming everything. The fact that fire doesn't stop and it consumes everything it comes across, that meaning of the word is analam. So each of these words denote a particular characteristic of that object. So and that's why we have these 1000 names of gods and things like that, because each of these words in Sanskrit denotes a particular property. And that is again when we come to the whole understanding of the universe, consciousness and all of that, the meaning of the word actually gives you an idea of the property of the object that we are describing. So that's also another I would say important aspect about Sanskrit. Another example, like for example, the word Veda. Veda itself means knowledge. It comes from the again the root word vid, which means to know. Okay. So similarly, we have a lot of all the words that are in Sanskrit will have a meaning associated with it. It will be a meaningful word. To your point, Rajiv ji, for example, computer, right? It's a new word, but we do have an equivalent word in Sanskrit which is called Sanganakam. So Ganaka means to count. Sanganaka is that which counts. It's a computing. It computes together, right? Similarly, you have telephone. Okay, so Vani means sound. Dura means distance. So Duravani, that which takes sound very far off, right? Or by which sound can travel very far. Similarly, you have words like uttankana. Tanka means to kind of imprint actually. And so Uttankana is typing. Okay, so typewriter, typing, keyboard, all of these words. So there is actually no word that cannot be created, because all you need to do is describe the word. And that is why you can have more than one word for the same object. Okay, it just describes it just looks at what property are you trying to describe for that object. Any questions here? Have I answered you, Rajiv ji? Okay, great.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you very much.
So the another reason,
Just sorry, yeah, just one thing I came to my mind that
please.
is there any authority who will be taking care of creating new words, adding up, or it is up to us that
Up
we
to
will be
you.
creating, for
Up to
example,
you.
okay,
Up to
okay,
you.
okay.
So you can create your own words. Right now, because the number of people who know Sanskrit are very small, and Samskrita Bharati is actually the group of people who are highly associated with contemporizing Sanskrit today, you will find many words originating from those group of people, but that doesn't mean that they are the custodians. You are free to invent your own words. Okay. There are rules, however, on how you need to invent a word, and that requires the knowledge of grammar. Okay, so the word cannot be randomly created. It needs to be rooted in the grammar, which is the whole idea of learning Sanskrit. The other thing about consciousness is that, see, we understand consciousness as that which is experiencing. Okay, so consciousness is the witness, the one who is experiencing. Everything is happening around the observer. All actions are happening around observer. And therefore, in Sanskrit, the root of everything, all sentences, is around what is happening, action. Okay, so action is the root or the core of all sentences in Sanskrit. So when you get into trying to understand the meaning of a sentence, the first thing you look at is what is happening, what is the action, what is going on. Okay, because that is what happens with the observer. The observer is looking and saying, what is happening, right? What am I feeling? What am I experiencing? What is happening? Curiously, in Sanskrit, there are actually two types of words. There is one called Atmaneyapadi and Parasmeyapadi. By and large, Atmaneyapadi is internal actions and Parasmeyapadi are external actions. Although in today's world, they are used interchangeably, but essentially Atmana means self. So all that happens within me. And Parasme is between. Parasme means between. Okay, between two people. So whenever there's a transaction, um, it's typically parasme kind of word. Whenever it's like an internal activity, it's Atmanepadi. However, it's not used in that way anymore, but you will see a lot of these references in the Vedas. Okay, so for example, let me give you this. So for example, this word kr, I talked about it. Kr is the sound to do something. So kr, if I do an action externally, let's say for example, I light a lamp, okay, or so deepam jwalayati, deepa jwalanam karoti. So I'm doing something. Externally, it is karoti. When something happens internally, so like meditations and stuff like that, then we use the word kriyate. So you have words like karma, okay, karya, all denoting external things. Then you have words like kriya and all happening internally. Okay, so that's also another, I would say, very, very unique feature of Sanskrit, which in today's usage probably is not seen, but you'll see it in the Vedas. So, for example, the word pashyati, pashya means to see. So mostly people use the word pashyati, okay, or drishyate. But in the Vedas, when they talk about Brahman, okay, when they talk about consciousness, they'll always use the word ikshate. Ikshate means it's atmanyapadi, it's happening inward, right? It's happening within the self. So there are a lot of these kind of subtle things which is unique only to Sanskrit. Which gives that flavor of that language, right? Where the language of consciousness comes kind of alive. The other thing about Sanskrit is the whole concept around duality, okay? Because the world is actually seen as a reflection of us. So there's I and then there's you, okay? And then it's dual, okay? Or we have everything which is polarity. So you have hot and cold, you have happiness and sadness. Experiences are understood through the dimension of polarity. So in Sanskrit, this is, in all languages, you have singular and plural, one, many, one, many, one, many. But in Sanskrit, there's one, there is two, and then there is many. Okay, so this is again, a very subtle indication of the fact that the language of Sanskrit was constructed or is essentially a language that supports the studies of consciousness. Okay, so for example, you have, when you talk about duality, we have things like, so it could even either be pairs or it could be opposites. I'm sorry, someone has to go on mute, I think. There is some disturbance. Hello. Yeah, thank you. So you have, for example, in Bhagavad Gita, you'll see, right? Sukha dukhe, okay? So it should not be not sukha dukha, sukha dukhe. Or labha labhau, okay? So gain and loss, or happiness and sadness, or even, forces of nature, right? Mitra Varuna, so sun and water, solar and, water. Or Surya Chandra. Okay, so you'll see these pairs. Wherever pairs are visible in nature, either they are pairs that go together, okay, forces that act together, or they could be opposite forces. So all this is very specifically described using this duality, this dual. So when we say singular and plural in Sanskrit, we have dual. And it's very important when it comes to describing these kind of concepts in the language. Any thoughts, questions, observations? Another thing which I thought was very interesting again is that the grammatical construct for describing something, like, for space as well and time are the same. So if I want to know where something is happening, it's about space. So where did it happen? Similarly, if I want to know when did it happen, that is basically related to time. But in Sanskrit, the grammatical construct for both space and time is the same. So if I I'll say Rame Asti, it happened in Rama. Okay, it happened within him. Oh, let me say Deshe Asti, it happened in the country. Or if I said Saptavadane A, so A denotes it happened at that time. Saptavadane Abhavat, it happened at 7 o'clock. So all of it, it's the same grammatical construct which is used to denote both space and time. So you'll actually find a lot of so this, and not only it's everywhere in Indian texts you will find this concept of dik kala, and space and time spoken of together. But in Sanskrit, it's built into grammar, it's built into the language, which basically means that we always knew that space and time were intimately linked. We didn't have to wait for Einstein to come in the 1920s to tell us that space and time is part of a continuum. So I think the more we go and understand the language of Sanskrit, we'll actually start deciphering things which are not so obvious. So these are all very subtle things about the language. These connections is something that you figure out after some time, but these connections are inherent to the structure of the language. Any questions, thoughts, observations over here? Let me go on. Another thing which is very interesting and unique about Sanskrit is that the order of the words is not very important when it comes to understanding the meaning. So if I have a sentence that says Ram reads the book, okay? Ram reads the book. So I said Ram, and then I said read, and then I said book. So because I said this in English this way, you know that Ram is the subject and book is the object. If I said in Sanskrit, this is, we say the same thing as Ramaha Patati Pustakam. So Patati means read, Pustakam means book, and Rama. So Ramaha Patati Pustakam. This is a grammatically correct sentence. I also, if I say it slightly differently in English, if I were to say book reads Ram, then it's a ridiculous sentence, right? So then we are saying that the book is doing the reading and the Ram is object. So the order of the words in English and in many other non-Indian languages, the order of the words is very important and it conveys a certain meaning. But in Sanskrit, if I say Pustakam Patati Ramaha, even then also I know that it is Rama who is doing the reading and the book is the one that is being read. And if I have sentences like, reads Ram a book, you won't even know which is the object, which is the subject, right? In the second case, at least you know that, okay, book is the subject, Ram is the object, but it's a nonsensical sentence. It cannot happen in the real world. In the third sentence, reads Ram book, it just makes no sense because the order of the words are very important in English. But in Sanskrit, Patati Ramaha Pustakam is perfectly fine as well. So in Sanskrit, the order of the words are not important because each word is carrying a specific meaning which brings context to that sentence. Each word has a context. And this is something which is again native to the language. And it is one of the reasons why Sanskrit is also a very good language for natural language processing and things like that. Okay. So when people say Sanskrit is very computerized and it's a computer language and it's suitable for computer language, this is one of the features of it that makes it so. Okay. Move on. In fact, not only because of this feature is it a highly programmable and a good language for language parsing for computers, although they don't use it, they've actually used the structure of sentences to create natural language processing. They've used the concepts of Sanskrit, but they've not used the language as such. But these concepts of Sanskrit is what is being used. Okay, but Sanskrit itself, because you can put the words in any order, you actually have words like works like what is called Raghava Yadiyam. Okay, which is a poem of 30 shlokas. When you read it from right to left, top to bottom, okay, it is the story of Rama. Okay, so if you look at the first shloka, it's Vandeham Devam Tam Shritam. So I bow to that, to that Deva. Okay, Rantaram Kalam Bhasa Yaha. So it describes Rama. Okay, but that same shloka, when I read it in the opposite direction, okay, so starting from the last, Vase. So Vase will be, reverse of Vase will become Seva. Okay, and Leela Mara Yodhye. So Ye, sorry, Dhyeyo Rama Lali. Okay, so if you read it opposite, it actually becomes Seva Dhyeyo Rama Lali. Okay, which is Rama is Lakshmi. So Rama Lali is basically it is describing Krishna. Okay, and so this whole shloka, when you read it from right to left, it is describing the story of Rama. If you read it from left to right, it's describing the story of Krishna. So these kind of gymnastics, poetical gymnastics, can be done only in Sanskrit because of the fact that the words can be put in any way, and you can deconstruct the words whichever way you want to. Okay. So any questions, thoughts, observations over here?
Yeah, I think that's very good point because you mentioned like it's context-free grammar which has been used in computer programming. So Naum Chomsky, basically the one who
Yes.
invented this parser and all lexical analysis of compilers, basically, he mentioned that Sanskrit is the language which can be used for programming, and but unfortunately it is not in the practice because
No. Yeah. In fact,
yeah.
Noam
So but
Chomsky's that
yeah,
entire, everything that he talks about from a language construct, that whole concept is called Karakas. Okay. So Karakas is basically around how do you look at the verb and how do you look at objects in relation to the verb in the sentence. Okay. All the words in the sentence.
right, right.
So it's really the Karaka concept, but then Noam Chomsky said that, he came about it by himself and he didn't, he didn't read the Indian
Yeah, yes,
so we have to, we can't claim that it is we who gave it to the world, but the fact is that we
yeah.
knew it for years, centuries.
Yes, exactly. And one more thing, like they related to your previous slide where you
Mhm.
mentioned the time and space continuum. So
Yeah.
basically, so I basically there is a movie named Arrival, and where
Okay.
there is some alien basically who comes to Earth, and then
Mhm.
they speak in a different language. So there is some linguist who is provided to decipher that. So when she learns their language, then she starts thinking in terms of space and time. Otherwise, she was not able to think it. So the language definitely impact our thought process. That's basically proven. So Sanskrit is definitely one of the language, I hope.
There are many things like that, right? I don't claim to be an expert. I'm still in the learning process of Sanskrit. Okay. So there are so many more things which I need to learn. But even for somebody like me who is not a scholar, just someone who has got some basic level of understanding, even to me, if all these things are obvious, imagine if you go deep into the language, what all will unearth. So, which brings me to this whole point about how do we get started, right? What is it? So, if I want to read a shloka in Bhagavad Gita, for example, or in Ramayana or Mahabharata, what should I know? Okay. So, I would basically put it into 6 steps. Okay. These are the 6 steps which we kind of need to master. The first is need to know the aksharas. Aksharas is basically the alphabets, okay? Alphabets, or what we call phonemes. So because alphabet is A, B, C, it's not a sound, it's something else, right? Because when you say A, it's actually A sound that you're making, or when you say B, it's B sound. In Sanskrit, we have A, E, U. So we have certain sounds which are called the aksharas, okay, or varnas. So you need to know the aksharas well. In terms of being able to pronounce them, in terms of being able to read them. And so we'll come to that piece, okay? Second thing is that you need to know certain patterns. And what are these patterns? I will go into more detail. Third is you need to know the whole process of building words with prefixes and suffixes. This is also something I'll come to in more detail. Then once you know how to make words, then you need to know what is a grammatically correct sentence and what is a non-grammatically correct sentence. And there are some grammatical rules which you need to follow. And then in Sanskrit, after that, you can actually take words and build bigger words out of it. Okay. So this whole process is called samasa. And once you're able to do all of these things, then you'll be able to look at a shloka and actually figure out what is the meaning of that, literal meaning of that shloka. So this is the process. Out of this process, and we'll come back to this, we'll look at it after this presentation, we'll come back again and we'll look at the slide. Okay. So what is language? So bhasha is language. Bhasha means bhashyate iti bhasha. That which is spoken only is language. So not that which is written. Okay. So people practice writing. You don't have to practice writing Sanskrit. You have to practice speaking and pronouncing Sanskrit. So we are very used to writing. Okay. When we go to school also, they make us write. You don't have to write. You need to know how to identify alphabets, no doubt. But the actual language will only be mastered when you listen to it, and when you speak and when you listen. So that is a very important part about Sanskrit. Then what is written? Only script. Okay. So whatever script which I need, only that script is, needs to, is, and script is written. And I'll explain the difference between script and language. And we have an expert here too. I think Varun has joined the call, or is he still there, or has he left? Okay, maybe it's not there. So for example, these are 4 different scripts that you see. Okay, here I have Sharada script. Let me see if I have a pointer. Yeah, this is the Sharada script, which is largely used in the North India, Nepal area. Then you have the Grantha script, which is largely used in the South. Okay. Then you have the Indo-Roman script, which is used by the Westerners mostly when they want to learn Sanskrit. And then you have the Devanagari script, which is what most of India uses, okay? Because Hindi is based on Devanagari script. So essentially you can use any script, so long as the script has the ability to convey the range of sounds that are there in Sanskrit. So what are the range of sounds? You have e. So like that, you have about 10 of them. E, u, r, a, I, o, a, 10 or 12. Then you have sounds like k, g, ng, ch, j, nya, t, d, n. You have all those. That's I think another 25 plus another 10 or something. Okay, so totally around 50 odd sounds are there in the language. Okay, which are the aksharas. Some say 50, 52, 55, that's differing number. Okay, but essentially these are the ones. if the language script can convey these sounds, then like for example, Marathi, Bengali, I believe these languages, Telugu, in many of these languages, you can actually write down Sanskrit without losing the essential meaning. In some languages, you can't. For example, in Tamil, you can't. You don't have all of the, the differences between ka and kha. You don't have ka and ga. You don't have. So you can't. So they have actually therefore in between kind of a script like Grantha. Okay, but from a practical perspective today, the script is more or less standardized with Devanagari. Okay, so I get a lot of people who ask me, can't we use Indo-Roman? I'm like, the number of texts that you can read will be limited because the number of books that are published in all these other scripts are limited. So from a learning perspective, a basic understanding on Devanagari, being able to read Devanagari is mandatory to proceed with studying Sanskrit. Any questions, thoughts? Hope everybody over here knows Devanagari. If not, that is actually your first step. Okay. So what do I need to know? So every language is basically communicated in the form of sentences, which is called vakya. Sentences are made out of words. Words are called pada. And words are made out of aksharas, okay, which these a, I, u, ka, ku, ta, te, tai, all of those are basically aksharas, phonemes, okay. So you put a few aksharas together, you get a word. You put a few words together, you get a sentence. That's basically the structure. It's a very simple structure, okay. Now, the first step is to basically understand aksharas properly. Most of you who speak Indian languages will know this. Even if you don't know how to write it in Devanagari, you'll be able to learn it very quickly, okay. What becomes important is how you pronounce it, okay. And initially, when you study Sanskrit, you need to know the pronunciation. So like, for example, ka comes from the throat, ga comes from the throat. Then there are different types of ta. There's one ta and there's one ta. So in ta, it touches the roof of your mouth. In ta, it touches your teeth. So the position of the tongue, the position of how air flows through your throat, all of these are basically involved in the study of alphabets, okay. And Sanskrit goes into this in a very great detail. So that's why the pronunciation is very important. And these are one of the few things that you should do, and there are plenty of YouTube channels that can help you with this. The second thing in Sanskrit about sounds and alphabets is not just about writing it, but it's what happens when two sound waves merge. Okay, so when two sounds merge, it creates a third sound. Okay, so for example, if you do a and together, it creates a. So that's like an amplification. Okay, or if you do a and an e together, it creates an a. All right. So a is actually an outcome of interference between a wave and e wave. So Sanskrit is really, very in that way scientific about when two sounds get together and interact, what does the interference produce? Is it an amplification of the sound, or is it an interference of the sound? Or is it just generally, just go together, right? So this has been studied in a lot of detail, and this is a topic in itself, which is called Sandhi. Okay, very important piece that needs to be studied. So for example, if you have the sound and ka, it becomes anka. So that m becomes ng. Okay. Similarly, if you have and ja, it becomes anja. The m becomes ng. Nya. Okay. Or if you have and da, it becomes anda. So that m sound becomes n sound. Or if you have plus ta, so it becomes anta. So the m becomes n. Okay, so when two sounds are together, initially it might have been a m, but because it's with something else, it becomes ng. Okay, or it becomes nya, or it becomes n, or it becomes n. Like that, there are many rules, and these rules are actually, you won't figure it when you speak, because naturally, if you say and ta and you say ta, you will not be able to say ta unless you have space. The moment you say it together, it will become anta. It automatically happens. Okay. So these are automatic things which they have studied scientifically, and it is all part of the, Varna. So this piece you'll need to know, because when you do shloka, decipher shloka, and you want to read shlokas, you need to know basically which sound has morphed and why it has morphed. So you'll have to reverse engineer. Okay. Now to learn any language, how are we doing on time? We have another 20 minutes. So if you really want to master a language, you need to know many words. Okay. Because even if the sentence is here and there, haywire a little bit, you can't communicate unless you actually have words, right? It's through words that we communicate. And then the words become meaningful through a sentence. So the whole problem is really, how do I build vocabulary, right? So standard, what do we do? At least when we were all younger, they used to say dictionary. Every day open the dictionary and pick 10 words and learn 10 new words. Okay. So when I was, preparing for my MBA entrances and all, this is how, we would bring a thesaurus or dictionary and we would read. Unfortunately, this is not possible. Okay. Because Sanskrit has almost infinite number of words that exist. How is that? I will explain it to you. Okay. So actually, if you ask me, Sanskrit is like a Lego box. There are 3 key pieces in the Lego box. One is the dhatu. Remember, I told you there are 2000 sounds from which everything originates from. Okay. Those 2000 sounds are the dhatus. Now, I do certain things with the dhatus. I add something at the end of the dhatu, add something in the front of the dhatu. So the end of the dhatu is a suffix, which we call a pratyaya, and in the start of the dhatu is something called a prefix or a upasarga. So I need not always have add both. I can have a dhatu with just a pratyaya, okay, or I could have an upasarga also. So upasarga is like optional, okay, but pratyaya is usually there. So now when I add this together, that's when I get a word, okay. And how does this whole process happen? So I have a dhatu, I add a suffix or a pratyaya, and then I get either a verb or a noun. Okay. In English, we call it a noun or a verb, but in Sanskrit, we call it kriyapada or a namapada. So namapada is something that describes an object. Kriyapada is something that describes an action. Okay. Either I get an action word or I get an object verb, a word. Then to that, I can add again any of these words. I can again add a prefix or a suffix. Okay, I can add another prefix and suffix to it. And then what would I get? I get more words. So you can see this building block is increasing, right? So this has just 2 pieces. Now this has more pieces. And I can keep adding. I can add as many suffixes. I can add as many dhatus. Obviously, there are some rules on how I can add, what I can add with what. But essentially, you can create a word which is as long as a paragraph. Okay. And many of these poets, that's what they do. They create such long verbs by adding so many pieces together. Literally you have, this is the whole, process. So it's an infinite number of words that can get generated in Sanskrit. I'll stop here. Any thoughts, questions? Is this concept clear? So if you have an infinite number of words, you cannot have a dictionary. Okay. That's why Sanskrit dictionaries are very, they will always be insufficient. People have tried to create basic dictionaries, but you will never find all the words in the Sanskrit dictionary. It's not possible because it's infinite. Okay. So how do we go about solving this? What is the solution? Okay. Before that, let's just try to understand this with an example. Okay. So I told you that there is a verb called kr. So kr is a dhatu, which means to do. Okay. So from kr dhatu, I can create words which are verbs. Okay. So I create a verb. One is karoti, kriyate. So these are all verbs which are coming from kr. So kr plus ti means karoti. Kr plus te means kriyate. It's not as simple as that, but by and large. Then I can create nouns also. So for example, karyam. So which is done, karyam. Okay. Or I can create karma. Okay. Or I can say kriya, karta. All of these certain suffixes have been added, and kr plus some suffix gives karyam, kr plus some other suffix gives karma, kr plus some other suffix gives kriya, kr plus some other suffix gives karta. Karta means the person who is doing the action. Okay. So like that, I can create nouns also. Okay. Then I can also create certain adjectives. So for example, I say, or adverbs like kriyamanaha, that which is being done. Okay. or kartavyam, that which needs to be done, okay, or karaniyam, again, that which is, fit to be done or worth doing or should be done, ought to be done, okay. So again, all of these are from the kriya dhatu with some prefixes and with some suffixes. Then I can even take two of these words together and create a new word. Like for example, I have karya over here, I have karta over here. So karya means job, karta means doer. So karya plus karta is the doer of a job or organizer. And we know these words, right? Because they are there in Hindi also. So karya karta actually comes because karya word and karta word, which both come from kriya dhatu, are put together. Similarly, krama means order. It's from a different dhatu. Okay. So if I say karya and krama, then it's order of an activity, which is basically a program. Okay. Or I can, patram means letter. If I take patram and if I put karya, then I can get a word that says worksheet, karya patram. Okay. So like that, you can, just put words together and create more words. And literally, that's why we say the unlimited number of words, which is there in Sanskrit. Now, if you don't know the word karya patram, you might be stumped. Or if you don't know the word karyakrama, you might be stumped. What do I do? Then you just break it down. You say, oh, looks like there are two words. There's a word karya, which I know. There's a word krama, which I know. Krama means order. Karya means activity. Oh, so maybe something to do with order of activity or program. So that's how you learn Sanskrit. Okay. So there is no dictionary, but once you start recognizing the words and recognizing the dhatus, then automatically sentence comprehension happens. Any questions here?
So do we need to remember the rules while formulating any word or anything?
Ideally, if you know the rules, it's great, but you don't need to. So, in the starting stage, my suggestion is pattern recognition. Okay. So, and I'll answer it shortly in the next slide. So essentially what we're saying is those who are looking for a Sanskrit dictionary, it might help you initially because when you know nothing, then obviously you need a list of words. Okay. So a list of words will help you, to some degree. But after some time, when you want to know the words, you will not find all the words in the dictionary. And that's when you need to know how to decipher the words, right? So this whole Lego block building process is what we need to figure out. How does this Lego block get built? Okay. And this is pattern recognition. So you need to know certain rules, but more than knowing all the rules, there are many rules. It is important that you recognize the patterns. So there are around 2,000 rules that are there in Sanskrit, which I'll come to in a while. 4,000 rules of grammar. You don't need to know all these rules. If you know a few patterns itself, you will be able to figure out. And the whole idea about Sanskrit is start recognizing patterns. And in any place, this Pareto rule always works. Okay, 80% of the knowledge comes from 20%, right? So 80% understanding you can get by learning 20% Sanskrit. So what is that 20% which you have to learn? That is what we will see right now. If you have the 20% knowledge, what is that 80% which you will be able to figure out? And then the remaining, it's the law of marginal returns, right? The more you know, it's only marginal learning that you get. But 80% of the benefit you will get from a very small piece of activity. And that is what I recommend to people to start their Sanskrit with, because the moment they do this 20% very well, then they find that they are motivated to go deeper into Sanskrit. Those who take shortcuts in this inevitably never proceed in learning Sanskrit. We'll just look at an example, okay? So I have a new word which is called anukaroti. I have no idea what does this word anukaroti mean. I know there are three blocks. There's something in the prefix, there's a suffix, and then there's a word in the middle, which is the dhatu. And the dhatu is the meaning, okay? So what is anukaroti? So maybe with a little bit of knowledge, I know. Okay, anu is, I know there is a prefix called anu. So anu plus karoti. I've come across this word karoti. So anu karoti means something to do with doing. Karoti means do. Anu I also know is basically means follow. So something to do with following. Okay. Karoti When I look at karoti, I know kr is do, and ti means when I see the pattern ti, I know that it means it's present tense. Okay. So the ti word, and this is what you'll study in grammar. When I see the pattern of a word ending in ti, I understand a few things because of this pattern. This is a pattern. T is a pattern. That pattern tells me, oh, it's actually present tense, and it's being done by one person, and it's a third person. It gives me certain details. So with that details, I know that this whole word is about doing. It's about following, and it's about a person, present tense following. Okay, and anukaroti means to adopt. Okay, or follow. So this is how we come across and we break down unknown words. By breaking them down into the known parts, recognizing certain patterns. Oh, anu is like one pattern. T ending tells me something else. Kr is the dhatu. I figured it out from this because I know the patterns of how these words work. And then I get the meaning. Any questions over here? Rajiv ji, I will come to answering your question in a while. Okay. So the more patterns you know, the more words you know. Again, not all patterns are equally important. So we said that there are 2000 dhatus. You don't need to know 2000 dhatus. Most of the words, commonly you will find 50 dhatus. Those 50 dhatus, if you know, 80-20 principle is taken care of. Okay. So it is that few things which you, once you can recognize, because not, no, of the 2000 dhatus, there are many which have never been used also. You will never find them. So if you know about 50 dhatus and if you know 100 dhatus well, then you are actually good to go. Okay. So how many patterns are there? So we said there's prefix, there's suffixes, and then there's the dhatu. I said there are 2000 dhatus. There are 22 prefixes, and there are 7 types of pratyas, but totally 480 pratyas. Again, you don't need to know 480 suffixes or pratyas. If you know a few, maybe 8 to 10, 10 to 12 of those, if you know, your 80-20 rule will be taken care of. Okay. So if you look at it, it's actually 2 crores, 11 lakhs, 20,000 combinations that can get created. Create combinations, not unique words, because I can add infinite number of upasargas and multiple pratyas, right? So, but essentially you have these many combinations and more than that. And all of these have been codified in by the grammarian Maharishi Panini into just 4,000 rules. Again, you don't need to know all 4,000 rules. You just need to know a few patterns to get started, and 80% of your job is done. Any thoughts, questions over here? So where do you start? Okay. So let's look at the sentence, okay? We saw the sentence earlier. Ramaha pustakam patati. So Rama, book, reads. So Rama reads a book. Now, if you look at the sentence, the words can actually be classified into 2 types of words, okay? So you have words which describe objects. So over here, can you figure out what all words describe an object? Is Rama a word that describes an object? Anybody can unmute and answer.
Yes.
Yes. So Rama describes some person. Okay. So it's an object. Pustakam, does it describe an object?
Yes.
Yes. So that is also an object. So these two are Namapada. Patati means reads. Does it describe an object?
No.
No,
It describes
no.
an action. Okay. So as simple as that, the word is classified. You have Rama and Pustakam as Namapadas, and you have Patati as a Kriyapada. So there are 2 types of word. Any sentence in Sanskrit, all the words will fall into these 2 classifications only. Okay. They will either be a Namapada or they will be a Kriyapada. Nothing else. You might have many types of Namapadas and you might have many types of Kriyapadas. That's different. But essentially, they will fall into these 2 categories. So that makes life much simpler. I only need to understand what are, a few rules in Namapada, few rules in Kriyapada. So what is, so, okay, I think we did this slide. Okay. So how do I do this? So Namapadas tells me a few things. It tells me number of people. Kriya Pada tells me who is doing the action. So Nama Pada, it describes the object. Kriya Pada describes the action. So things like tense, past tense, present tense, future tense. All of that is mentioned in the Kriya Pada. So let me skip and come here. So for example, Kriya Pada, Patati. Patati means reading. So Patati is the first amongst these 9. So you have Patati, Patataha, Patanti, Patasi, Patataha, Patatha, Patami, Patavah, Patamaha. What does this mean? So this is a table which tells me present tense of reading. Okay. It says that if he is reading, then you should say Patati. If I am reading, I will say Patami. If you are reading, I will say Patasi. So depending on who is doing the reading, the ending will change. Patati is if third person is reading. Patasi is if you are reading it. And Patami is if I am reading. Okay. So the ending tells me two things. It tells me who is doing the activity, and it also tells me which tense is it, present tense, past tense, future tense. Okay. It also tells me certain other things. For example, if many people are doing it, it's Patanti. If all of us are doing it, it's Patamaha. So the ending tells me a few things. What is important over here is to know this 3 by 3 table. If I know this 3 by 3 table well, then, and if I encounter the word, for example, Patanti, then I immediately know that it's describing multiple people in the present tense. Multiple people are reading in the present tense. Okay. So this 3 by 3 table needs to be mastered. Okay. So if I master the 3 by 3 table, I will master verbs or Kriya Padas. The other thing that you need to study is something called a 7 by 7 table. So, for example, you have Rama Patati. Okay. So Rama is reading. Now, how do I know whether Rama is a subject, object? So it could be anything, right? Because in Sanskrit, we don't have words like is, with, from, to, we don't. Those kind of words are built into the word. So when I say Ramena, it means with Rama. If I say Krishnena, it means with Krishna. If I say Ramasya, it means belonging to Rama. If I say Krishnasya, it means belonging to Krishna. If I say Rame, it means inside Rama. Okay, inside his mind or whatever. If I say Krishna, it means inside Krishna. If I say Ramaya, it means for Rama. If I say Krishnaya, it means for Krishna. Okay. So these endings of Rama. So Ram aha, Ram Ram ena, Ram aya, Ram at, Ram asya, Ram e. These endings tell me what is Rama the subject? Is it the object? Is it the instrument with which something is done? Is it the location where something is happening? So extra information on the word Rama is being supplied by the ending of the word Rama over here. Is this clear to you all?
Yes.
Okay. So I need to, if I encounter a word Ramasya in the sentence, I need to understand that it means Rama is not the subject over here. Rama is some relationship. Rama, it belongs to Rama. Or if I encounter the word Ramaya over here, I need to understand, no, Rama is not the subject. Something is being given to Rama, for Rama. Something is happening for Rama. Okay. Or if I encounter the word Ramena in the sentence, I need to understand that, oh, again, Rama is not the subject. Rama is the tool with which something is being done. Okay. So identifying these word endings becomes again second part of the pattern recognition. And for that, you need to know this 7 by 3 table. Okay. So essentially, if I understand this 3 by 3 table and the 7 by 3 table, the pattern, if I can do pattern recognition, the moment I see T, I know it's present tense and it's third person and it's singular. Or if I see Ram Asya, if I see Asya, then I know, okay, it's most probably something to do belonging to Rama, of Rama, okay, of that person, Krishnasya, or, you know, Ramasya, Kshetrasya, okay, then I know it's belonging to. This pattern recognition is where you need to spend a lot of time memorizing these patterns. But the moment you do this pattern recognition, irrespective of how big the word is, if you can identify the ending, you have got quite a bit of mastery in Sanskrit. And this is where people stop. They just give up. They're like, oh, it's too difficult. It's not actually. It's something that takes about few months, 3-4 months to do the pattern recognition. But the moment you're done with this, then this becomes the foundation on which the rest of the Sanskrit knowledge gets built. I'll stop here. Any questions?
Just one thing I wanted to know: what is use of Dvivachan here? Rama mean, why do we need to have like two Ram?
Rama is a pattern, okay, which tells me that there are two Ramas. Now, it could be that Sita Ram and Kodanda Ram went together, okay, or Ramachandra and Ramakrishna went somewhere. So there two Rams went. Both Ramachandra went and Ramakrishna also went. Both Rama. Okay. So you may not use, see, the point is this, you may not use those words. So Rama may not be common. In fact, what happens is this Dvivachana is very uncommon. All right. And nowadays you have, so Samskrita Bharati teaches Sanskrit. What Samskrita Bharati has done is they have totally eliminated Dvivachana from their syllabus. Okay. So they try to teach you Sanskrit quickly because they want to give you quick wins. And I don't have a problem. It's actually a good approach to give people initial confidence. Okay. But if you don't know this Dvivachana properly, it becomes a partial foundation only in which you will learn. So you may not use it, but you need, when you see it, you need to understand, because Sanskrit is less about creating words and more about pattern recognition, because we are actually not going to make new, we are not going to write, 99% of us are not going to actually write Sanskrit essays or write a book in Sanskrit. Okay. We will do that much later, when we become scholars. But most of us want to be able to read Sanskrit. So you need to know that if I see this au or bhyam or yoho, if I see these endings, I need to know it's probably in the Dvivachana or it's in the second. Okay. So you may not use all of it. In fact, what it will come down to ultimately is Ramaha, Ramam, Ramena, Ramasya. These are the most used versions of this 7:3 table. So even if you can recognize these four, you're good to go.
Balaji, I have a question regarding
Yes,
3x7 table.
Mhm.
So, this table changes with the ending of
It changes with the ending. Yes.
the word too, right? For example,
Yes.
E has a different
Yes.
pattern.
E. Yes.
U has a different pattern.
Yes.
So when I'm trying to memorize these 7x3 tables, what
Yeah.
are the most important 3x7 tables?
Yeah, so that's a good point which Susan mentioned. So the word, depending on how it ends, the pattern it depends on how the word ends. So Ram, it ends with okay. So Ramaha, Ramo, Ramam, that is one pattern. Or if you have word Hari, E. So Harihi, Hari, Harayaha, Harim, Hari, Harin, Harina. So Ramena becomes Harina. Harina, Haribhyam, Haribihi. Then Haraye. Ramaya becomes Haraye. Okay, I becomes A. So there are only few. So what are the patterns you need to know? This pattern changes based on gender. Okay, so there are 3 genders. So there is masculine, feminine, and neutral. Okay? So based on gender, you need to know. And endings basically are endings, E endings, U endings, R endings, and non-vowel endings. Non-vowel endings, 2 or 3, if you learn, you've got it. Okay. So I would think that if you are able to master around 12 to 15 of these tables, okay, you are quite good to go. And then the rest you can learn it along the way, because there are always exceptions. Okay, there's always a new pattern where all of this is same except this one piece changes. There's always like that. And you will encounter those words as you keep learning Sanskrit. But if you do 15 of these patterns, the 80-20 rule applies. Does that answer your question?
Thank you.
Susan?
Yep, yeah.
Okay.
Yes,
So
thank you.
A ending, E ending, U ending, R ending, and couple of those non-vowel endings, okay, vyanjanas. Typically, if they end with th and th ending, if you do, and g ending, any one of those, then you will see those are all very similar, okay? They become very similar. And you need to do, so there are, so totally about 5 or 6 like this into 3, because you need to know masculine, feminine, and plural. So it turns out to be around 5 into 3, 15. Okay. And these 3 into 3 tables. How many of these 3 into 3 tables? Again, maybe again another 8 to 10 if you master of these tables. Then again, 80-20 rule is covered. Okay. And you are good to, you will actually find yourself being able to start understanding. And then we need to know that Sanskrit is infinite, right? So you will keep deciphering new things as you keep on going. But then that is part of the journey. But you will at least get started, and you will be able to, it's like, you know how to drive a car, you know the steering, you know the clutch, you know the accelerator, you know the brake. Okay, now you can get started. And then after that, you want to do all different kinds of gymnastics. Well, that's up to you. Okay, where you go, whether you're doing mountain driving or you're going in different kinds of terrains, that's all your skill. But at least you can start the car and get moving. Okay, and that's the whole idea of starting to learn. I think I will not take up more time. It's already 7 minutes up, but there's just a few more pieces. Okay. So once you know how to do this pattern recognition, then the next stage is really, with the pattern recognition knowledge, to know more about the different kinds of suffixes, sorry. So for example, if I add a suffix called matup, mat. So if I have a word called buddhi and mat, then I get a word buddhiman. So one who has buddhi, one who has intelligence. Okay, that's what it means. Or if I have a word that's guru is like big, large. Okay. And then if I add a suffix that says ana, then I get a word called gaurava. Gaurava is like prestigious, that's the meaning. So you start creating new words. So from something great comes prestige. Okay. The whole aspect of being great, that is prestige, gaurav. Okay. So you get to make new words. But gaurav comes from guru. So you don't need to learn gaurav separately. If you know that Guru creates Gaurav, you can figure it out. Oh, Gaurav has something to do with the word Guru. Guru, which not only Guru means teacher, but Guru means large. Okay.
But how are these like this are getting converted to
Yeah.
verb?
So that is
This
all.
is
Arnab becomes there are all Panini rules. So Panini has written 4,000 rules, and so those rules you start learning. So this is the next level of Sanskrit learning. Okay. Once you master these tables, then you get into making these. Yeah, please go ahead.
I just have this word. So we combine two different kind of words like buddhi and matupu something,
Yes.
and then it is becoming man. What is the rule of that?
Yeah. So that is the rule. So you will actually, matup is the technical word, but you can actually say buddhi plus mat becomes buddhimat. Buddhimat becomes buddhiman in the case of masculine. In the case of neutral, it becomes buddhimat. And in the case of feminine, it becomes buddhimati. Okay. So when you start learning about the prefixes, then you will start learning these things. So it becomes buddhi, matup is there, up goes away. So mat is remaining. So buddhi plus mat becomes buddhimat. And the masculine of buddhimat is buddhiman. So if it's an object which is intelligent, it's a buddhimat object. If it's a man who is intelligent, he's a buddhiman. If it's a woman who is intelligent, she's a buddhimati. Okay. Again, why buddhiman? Why mati? These are again all to do with just knowing how these suffixes work. So when you figure out one, then you figure them all out. So you can create buddhiman, okay, shraddhavan. So there's so many words like yashavan. If you read this Ramayana, there's a passage which goes on describing all the characteristics of Rama. All you will find it is this matup which is being used everywhere. Oh, that means Buddhiman is one who has buddhi, one who has intelligence. Yashavan, one who has fame. Okay. One who has Shraddha. So like that, you just keep, you'll be able to figure it out very quickly. You don't need to know the word by itself. You just figure out the ending and say, oh, it's a property that he has. Make sense?
Yeah. I was thinking like it is because ta ta dha dha na in that line ta becomes na.
Sorry, no. Na is basically because of, when mat becomes man, okay, for masculine.
Oh,
So
because it's masculine, that's why
because
it
it's
becomes.
masculine, okay. If not, it will be buddhimat, which is, so the word will be buddhimat, and from buddhimat you get buddhiman for masculine and buddhimati for feminine.
Okay.
So
Okay,
there
ma'am.
is a particular order in which the words get created. It's almost like a programming language, okay? And that is the whole idea of the Panini grammar. So Panini actually said, so the story is like this, okay? So Brahma and Indra, so Brahma, when he created the universe, he said, okay, come, let me teach you about language. I'll teach you grammar. So Brahma and Indra had this conversation on where they were learning grammar. And they started, and this is the, the years of the gods, okay? So they kept on discussing, they took one bird by one bird after one bird, and they kept on discussing, and they went on for 1,000 god years, okay? And 1,000 god years are like, I don't know how many, how many thousands of our years. And they didn't finish, they barely even started. After 1,000 years, they realized they had not got anywhere because there's such infinite number of words in Sanskrit. And then they said, hey, this is not going to work for the humans. For the humans, we definitely need to have a method which is a little bit more easy. And then that's when Panini thought about it and said, let me codify it. Let me break down these words into rules. And then he broke the whole thing down into 4,000 rules. And that's why Panini is considered, literally a magician, for the way he has basically taken infinite words and converted it into 4,000 rules. Make sense?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we don't need to know 4,000 rules as well. That is advanced. We just start with a few patterns. You start with a few patterns, you master those few patterns, and then you add on new patterns. And you keep on doing pattern recognition. And after some time, you will figure out it becomes very easy. So I told you we add more. So once we do the pattern recognition, then we can create more words. So now I have a word that says Buddhiman. Now, Buddhiman is a word ending with na. Okay. So Susan, this is another type of word which you need to know. Words which end with ta and words which end with na. Okay. And they are very similar. Then Buddhiman has a 7x3 pattern. Okay. Gaurav has a 7x3 pattern. And the pattern for Gaurav is the same as Ram. So Gauravaha, Gauravau, Gauravaha, Gauravam, Gauravau, Gauravan. So even though I created a new word, the pattern for it is very simple. Okay. It might be a little confusing for you now because we haven't learned Sanskrit structure, but what we need to understand is that even if we create new words, from Buddhi, I created Buddhiman. If I want to use Buddhiman in a sentence, all I need to know is the pattern. Similarly, from Guru, I created Gaurav. Again, if I want to use it in the sentence, I only need to know the 7x3 pattern. So if I understand the pattern well, and if I know how to, a little bit about these prefixes and suffixes, I can again create new words. And I also mentioned that we can add two words and create another word. So for example, I have a word that says Ram and another word that says Ishwaraha. I can put it together and say Rameshwaraha. So this is a new word created out of Ram and Ishwar. Ishwar means God, Ram means Ram, is a person. Okay. So it could either be the God of Rama, or it could be the God who is Rama, or it could be, it could be Rama who is the God, right? So there could be many ways in which you interpret it. So this whole process of taking two words and putting it together to create a third word with a new meaning. Okay. So Ram is different and Rameshwar is different. So Rameshwar could mean Ram himself, if you think Ram is God, or it could be the person who is Ram's God, and Rama worships Lord Shiva. So Rameshwar is actually Shiva. Okay. So these all, these all are the gymnastics which you can start doing in Sanskrit once you basically understand how these words come together. Any questions over here? So now,
I was
yeah, go ahead.
I was just thinking like
Hmm.
we can teach this to GPT and get words created.
Yeah, they're making now a lot of these. There's so many people who are working on creating software for Sanskrit. So many. Okay. I think the reason why it's not happening is because big money is not going into it. Huge investments are not going. Okay. So the people who are doing it are all enthusiasts who they're putting their time and they're putting their personal money. There isn't a large scale, a $1 billion corporation which is actually trying to do this, unfortunately. Okay. But there are so many Sanskrit tools that are available today, which makes it, which is in such a way that you don't need to know these 4,000 rules also. Okay. So in fact, when I teach Sanskrit to people, I stopped telling them how to memorize. I've started telling them how to look up these words, right? So if you want to write something, you can look up, but when you want to read, you still need to have knowledge in your head. Okay, you can't outsource everything. There's a bare minimum of knowledge which you need to have in order to read faster, right? So there's nothing like knowing these patterns, which is why 80% if you know and the 20% you don't know, those you can look up against online resources and tools. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
But there's immense potential to create GPTs and those kind of things. Problem is commercial viability, intent, all of those.
And also, ma'am, like, do we have to have only those 2000 dhatu words, or can we have new dhatu words also?
See, these two dhatu, you don't need more, right? Because if you need a new dhatu, you can just put a prefix to it and add it to a dhatu, and a new dhatu is created. So you can actually create new dhatus. Okay, there's a mechanism to create new dhatus, by the way. So 2000 dhatus are the base dhatus which are given to you, but you can actually create your own dhatus. So I'll give you an example. Okay, so nya. Okay, the word nya, the sound nya means to know. Okay, knowing something is called nya. So nyata, one who knows. Janati comes from the word nya, means knows. Okay, o is knowing, present tense of knowing. Then jnanam, that which is known. Okay, these are all words which come out of the root nya. Now I can create a word that says wanting to know, the icha or the desire to know. That is called jignasa. Okay, so jignasa itself now is a new verb. So I could say jignasaha, the person who wants to know. Jignasati, the present tense of wanting to know. Okay, jignasuhu, he who wants to know. Jignasitaha, that which somebody wants to know. Okay, so from the root know, I think a lot of people got the time wrong, I guess. So from the whole point of wanting to know, you can create a new dhatu, which is called jignya. And from jignya, again, you can create verbs, nouns, etc., etc. So it's infinite, okay? So like, for example, you might have encountered the word mumuksha. Mumuksha is one who wants liberation. It comes from the dhatu moksh, okay? Much. Much is to be free. So mumuksha is he who wants to be free. He who has a desire to be free. Again, it's a dhatu which is from another dhatu. Does that answer your question?
Yes, ma'am. Yes,
so so the answer is, can you create your own dhatus? Yes, you can. Okay? And you don't have to invent them. There is a process by which you can invent them. And if you follow them, you will create your own dhatus.
I was actually thinking in this way, like, we already have so many, we have English words also. Can I create dhatus from English words? That's how I
Why do you
don't
want to? Because Sanskrit has more power. See, the point is this: do we need to add something to Sanskrit? See, my point is that add something to it if you find something missing in it. My take is that, and this is a take for most people who know Sanskrit, that English is actually does not have the power that is there in Sanskrit.
Yeah.
So you could use someone has to go to on mute. There's a lot of background noise. Yeah. So my take is that adding English words to Sanskrit is okay in the beginning when you're learning. Okay. So like, for example, I want to know, I'm saying I'm cooking. So I don't know how to say it in Sanskrit. So I'll say aham cooking karomi, aham reading karomi. Okay. Because I don't know enough words. So I can use English words temporarily. Okay. But
Okay.
can I add that to Sanskrit? I don't think so. And
Like
besides, we need to also understand that we are going to be creating less in Sanskrit and consuming more in Sanskrit. Okay, because the where we stand today, I don't think anybody is creating new content in Sanskrit. Okay, because there aren't enough consumers. That's a fact. Okay, there's hardly much Sanskrit content creation which is happening, new content creation. Instead, what we have is so much content which we are unable to consume. So all of our learning needs to be focused on how do we consume the existing content and make sense out of it.
Okay, like we have so many inventions also. Like for example, if you take the elements also,
Yeah,
they are being named differently,
yeah,
which were not there, maybe not there in those
Yeah.
times. If
Yeah.
we were to communicate about them or the latest
Yeah.
technology in Sanskrit, then we might have to use a different
No,
word.
you can use the English words only. Okay, if you have to communicate in Sanskrit. So if you want to say barium, just say barium. Okay, barium padartha or something like that. Okay, it's
Oh.
better, because if not, you will get confused. Because Sanskrit has its own version of physics and chemistry. Okay, and the way they approach atoms, molecules is very different. The way Sanskrit looks at science is very different way from how modern science is perceived.
Okay, understood. Yeah, ma'am.
So it will not make sense to take modern science concepts and to put it in Sanskrit. You might get confused. Okay, let me give you an example. Let me give you an example. Okay, and in fact, I will come to it in the last. Okay, but let me just explain it. Like for example, so the other thing about Sanskrit is that many of the words, the meanings are very context specific. Okay, so I have a word called guna. Guna in general terms means property. When I'm talking about a person, I say guna, I mean character. Okay, or good, he's good characteristics. So like honesty would be a guna and things like that. When I start studying some of the text, like if I study Sankhya, okay, Sankhya is one of the philosophical texts, and if I say guna, then means I'm talking about a property which is called sattva, rajas, or tamas. Okay, or if I'm starting reading Ayurveda, again guna becomes sattva, rajas, tamas. Okay, if I'm reading Sanskrit grammar by Panini, Vyakarana, and if I come across this term guna, then in the case of Panini, guna means the alphabets R, A, and O. These alphabets, that's guna. Okay, guna means these three alphabets. If I study guna in some other case, one more thing is there, I forgot. So you see the word guna has a different interpretation depending on what I'm studying. So the other thing about Sanskrit is that there is a language or glossary that is there for each language or for each science, each subject. There is a glossary of words, and you need to understand the glossary also. Okay, but that is only when you're doing technical studies. So because your question was related to science, right? Glossary for that subject, it's better to pick up. If I'm studying Western science and I'm trying to express it in Sanskrit, better pick up the Western science glossary.
Okay.
Okay.
Yeah, understood.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a better way to do it. All right. So coming back, right? So now we understood all these different concepts, hopefully. let's look at what is the studying. So first you need to know your aksharas. Okay, you need to be able to read it because everything is in Devanagari. All your texts are in Devanagari mostly. You should know how to read Devanagari. I think it's very important. Okay. The second thing is you need to know pattern recognition. So for that, you need to know your 3x3 patterns and 7x3 patterns. This is very, very important step. Okay. Only after you do this, can you then do building more words. So like we saw Buddhiman, Gaurava, if you want to do those kind of words, you need to first know these patterns also. Okay. These two go together. These are hand to hand. So this, you will learn this together actually. Okay. And then after that, there are other grammatical. So convert active voice to passive voice and, those kind of sentence, building these kind of sentences, all those things are additional grammar pieces. If you don't know it also, it's okay. All right. And then you need to know, if you get a long word, you need to know how to break those words. So like I said, Rama, Ishwara, you need to read, you need to see the word Rameshwara and understand that it is not Rama. But Rameshwara means the Ishwara of Rama, most likely, and could mean Shiva. So you need to know how to deconstruct larger words which are formed by more than one word. And finally, when you do this, you need to know how to take a shloka, because most of the texts are in shloka form, and break down the shloka into the different words. So this is, once you do this, reading like a basic text like Bhagavad Gita becomes easy. In my opinion, how long do you need to do this? Within 2 years, it's possible. This is possible within less than a year. Okay. And once you do this, within 2 years, you will actually be able to do all of this and you will be able to break down simple shlokas. So it's not an impossible dream to learn Sanskrit. It is very, very doable. Okay. I have a student. He's very focused. He's in his 60s. So I'm not a full-time Sanskrit teacher. Okay. I only do it to kind of, I'm only interested in encouraging people. I'm not interested in teaching. I don't charge. Okay. But I try to encourage people. So I have a student who's been with me for a year and he's in his 60s, he's retired. And this took him about 4 or 5 months. Okay. And it was very slow and very frustrating, but he didn't give up. But in a year, he knows how to break down shlokas now. So fast. This bump, if you overcome, and this you need to put in effort. And this is where people run away. Okay. If you can say this through, then the rest becomes easy. Okay. Any questions, thoughts, suggestions, comments?
No, it was very wonderful. Thank you so much. I'll start reading. I'll keep this 3x3 table and 7x3 table and start on.
So, what I used to do is that, and some of them have been here, I think Susan on this call and a couple of others, is I ran a few times. I have actually run it. I do like a 8 to 10 class. I used to do it of what is this 3x3 table and what is this 7x3 table. Okay. And how do you use it? And what are the different types of tables? I give an overview. Okay. And then how do you approach it? Okay. Again, I don't force people to learn it because, I just want them to know, okay, what is this 3x3 table all about? What is this 7x3 table? What's in it? What is the information in it? How do I learn it? Okay. What part of it should I learn? How many variations are there of it? So we do this in about, 8 to 10 classes of 1 hour and so. And after that, actually, you can do it on your own. And then there are so many free resources, so many books that are available. And you just apply those books, you do a few exercises. It's like maths. Okay. So in maths, if you know single digit multiplication, so I need to know the multiplication tables of single digits. So 1 into 1 up to 9 into 9. If I know this, then I can do 11 into 11 also. Okay. I can do 11,1111 into 12,000, 1212. Okay. I can do that very easily. So these tables are like this 3 into 3 tables and the 7 to 3 tables are like the arithmetic of single digits. Once you know numbers of 1 to 9, then you can handle numbers up to infinity. Exactly the same way, if you know a few of these, 3 into 3 tables and the 7 into 3 tables, if you understand them well, okay, then you can go and create infinite number of words, or you can identify infinite number of words. Does this make sense?
Yeah, yes, ma'am.
Yeah, it's just like maths, just like maths. And if you know how to do addition, you definitely know how to do multiplication. If you know how to do subtraction, you definitely know how to do division. And if you know these two, you can also figure out how to do integration and differentiation. Okay, so these are all concepts that are just built on top of each other. But you cannot get out of 1 and 9, and you need to know 9 time tables if you want to do fast. That is why we have to mug the tables, right? We always mug the tables. You don't sit, I mean, you can't do maths if you have to memorize the tables. You have to memorize up to 9 into 9, you have to memorize. Okay. And once you memorize these tables, then maths comes. If you have never memorized these tables, you cannot do any maths. You cannot. Okay. So is the case with Sanskrit. So once you get to that stage, you will be able to understand Gita shlokas. And then, of course, there are more things, right? If you want to read like a Shankara Bhashya, or if you want to read, let's say, certain darshanas, then you need to know some technical terms, which is paribhasha. If you want to read the commentaries, some advanced commentaries have a lot of this debating method, all of those things, then you will need to know certain darshanas. So then you start getting into technical areas, additional knowledge, which is nothing to do with the language. It is mostly to do with, and of course, if you want to read Vedas, then there are more things which you need to know about Vedas. Okay. But by and large, if you know these things, you can approach. So you cannot approach a Veda because you still need to know more things before you can do a Veda. But you can definitely read a text like Ramayana, okay, which doesn't have much technical words in it. Vedas have a lot of technical words, so you may not be able to read the Vedas by yourself. You need to know more, some more context is needed. Okay, so that's where we are. And thank you for patiently listening in. I will stop here and I will just take a few minutes, and I would just like your reactions. Each of you, if you would just say a few, did this give you clarity? Did this confuse you more? Do you feel inspired? Do you feel like it's not worth the time? And I would be happy if you could just, introduce yourself and just share your comments, and then we can end for the day. If you can come on screen also, it'll be nice. So I can just see you for a few minutes. Does anybody want to say something?
महोदय नमस्ते.
Namaste.
मम नाम प्रसादः. अहं किञ्चित् संस्कृतं जानामि अतः
बहु सम्यक् वदतु.
संस्कृतेन वदामि, किन्तु अहम् अष्टाध्यायी पाणिनि व्याकरणं न जानामि एव.
एतत् सर्वं जानन्ति. एतद् सुलभः प्रेजेंटेशन् किमर्थं भवान् दृष्टवान्?
न, किन्तु अष्टाध्यायी पठितुं मम इच्छा अस्ति एव. अहं तस्मिन् वर्गे अस्ति, अतः अहं दृष्टवान्. अहं मन्दिरे आसं किञ्चित् समयपूर्वम्. इदानीं मार्गमध्ये अस्मि, अतः केमेरा आन् न कुर्वन् अस्मि. अहं मुम्बै मध्ये निवसामि. मम मूलगृहमपि कोडङ्गलूरु मध्ये एव.
ओह, तर्हि वयं किञ्चित् समयम् अनन्तरं
सम्भाषणं कुर्मः. दृष्ट्वा एव अहं केवलं क्लिक् कृतवान्, किन्तु भवतः भाषणं तु बहु सम्यक् आसीत्, अतः पूर्णं श्रुतवान्. बहु सम्यक् आसीत्. अहम् अग्रिमकक्षा कदा इति एव मम प्रश्नः.
भवान् MA एतद् किमपि एतत् कार्यं यदि करोति तर्हि भवतः बहु उपयोगकारः भवेत् इति अहं मन्ये.
किन्तु सर्वत्र MA सर्वं केवलं पूर्णम् आङ्ग्लभाषायाम् एव ते पठन्ति.
न अहम् इदानीं संस्कृतभाषायाम् एव MA कुर्वन् अस्मि, कुर्वन्ती अस्मि. तत्र अस्माकं सो फॉर द बेनिफिट ऑफ अदर्स अहम् आङ्ग्लभाषायां वदामि. So although it was very enjoyable to speak to you in Sanskrit, it's very nice. So for someone like you who already knows the basic of Sanskrit, then you should focus on basically getting knowledge of the Shastras. So Shastranam yadi Shastra Vichaye वेदाः विषये अपि भवन्ति, साहित्यविषयाः अपि सन्ति, अस्माकं दर्शनानां विषये अपि सन्ति, संस्कृत व्याकरणं पाणिनि व्याकरणम् अपि सन्ति. इदानीम् अहम् MA कुर्वन् अस्मि MIT मध्ये. तस्य अहं किञ्चित् कथं योजनीयं तत् सर्वम् अहं ददामि.
पृथक् सम्भाषणं करिष्यामि अनन्तरं. धन्यवादः.
So you can look at things like an MA to going forward.
Yeah, because always, I've been frightened about Ashtadhyaya, 4,000 sutras and all that.
So don't, so we do it very separately. I haven't bothered to memorize the 4,000 sutras. In my course, we have actually broken it down into patterns again, okay? And to see these 480 pratyas, how do they come together? And again, here we are also trying to understand it from a pattern perspective, okay? So maybe all 4,000 are not needed because 4,000 sutras include a lot of exceptions also, okay? We don't need to do all that. So again, it's about what are we trying to do? We are not trying to be Sanskrit Pandits. We are trying to be able to approach our texts with a certain level of confidence and a certain level of capability, right? So to be able to do that, if you know by and large number of sutras, how the sutra works, how the Panini structure works, okay? How to interpret Panini grammar, that will take some time. Once you get that, then sutra interpretation becomes easy. And you will learn it in MA Sanskrit because I'm learning it right now. I'm in my second year. I'm still learning.
महोदय अस्तु अहम् अपि चिन्तयिष्यामि किन्तु अहं चिन्तयामि डिग्री सर्वं मम कृते तु डिग्री बहु कृतवान्
just attend the classes and learn whether you get a degree or not. Leave it.
अस्तु अस्तु धन्यवादः भवतः कक्षा कदा भवति?
अस्माकं कक्षा प्रातः एव भवति 6 o'clock, so सार्ध षड्वादने and अष्टवादने पर्यन्तं.
कदा आरप्स्यते भवति?
So we start, so it starts July मासे आरब्धं भवति. इदानीम् आरब्धः जातः. You can plan for next year.
अस्तु.
Okay. Anybody else? Rajiv ji, I'm not sure who's N cuts. If you could share your name, that will be helpful. Tilotama, Susan.
Hi, ma'am. My name is Narasimha. We met.
Oh, Narasimha. Okay. Thank you for joining, Narasimha.
Thank you, ma'am. It was very inspiring. It was also very simplifying.
Okay, thank you. Idea is to not complicate, make it simple. There are many exceptions, we should not look at the world from exceptions. We should only look at the world from rules and then slowly figure out, oh, this exception, okay. Then this is also exception, right?
It's a good way to start.
A simpler way to start. Rajiv ji, Tilotama, any suggestions from your end?
Hello.
Namaste.
Namaste, ma'am. Thank you for the class. It was really amazing. And I love how you teach.
So this
and
is just,
I can't wait for the next classes.
Okay, I don't know if I'm going to be doing classes, okay? Because classes are a big investment of my time. And what happens is that, it needs a certain batch size to be able to teach. So if there are enough people interested, then I will definitely teach. But
I'd like to learn a lot of things.
I have a WhatsApp, a Telegram group where there are interested people a part of it. You could be a part of it and just be a part of it.
I can share link.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you so much, ma'am.
No problem. Thank you very much. Rajiv ji, any thoughts from your end?
Hi, ma'am. Thank you very much. It was totally a different perspective, the way you combine all the latest computation and all, and then the representation of how we can simply try to understand Sanskrit sentences. That was really awesome. So I'm like very beginner in that, although I have studied till class 10th the Sanskrit, and but basically there has been a jigyasa from inside to understand those spiritual texts by myself without going through the
till 10th standard, no? Then you know these patterns.
Yeah, right.
So
I know these patterns. Even I had remembered this Rama and all those things.
So half your job is done.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
So you actually half your job is done. Now you need to know how to use the patterns. Okay.
Right.
So you should actually move quite fast on Sanskrit. So if you've
Yes,
done
ma'am.
it in school, and if they have made you study it like the 3x3 and 7x3, if they made you mug it, okay,
Yeah.
then
Right.
a lot of your work is done, and it can be fast.
Sure, ma'am. Yeah.
Okay, anyway, so I hope all of you find your path in learning Sanskrit, and thank you for joining today. It was a pleasure meeting all of you, and thank you for your time. And sorry, we are a little bit over time, but thank you so much. Have a nice
Thank you.
weekend.
Thank you very much.
Dhanyawad.
Thank you, ma'am.
Thank you.
So,
Bye-bye.
they say in Sanskrit, alparambah kshemakaraha. So if you start small, it is a, it will lead to something good, right? Even a small start is, in fact, more beneficial. A smaller start is more beneficial. So whatever whichever way you start, just start, right, and start learning Sanskrit. Then you'll meet
Kshanashah kanashchaiva vidyam artham ta iti samskritena vadati. In small morsels, we can take food and
correct.
vidya and artham. Yeah, both will come in
correct.
small morsels. Dhanyawad, Mahodi.
Absolutely.
Super class.
Dhanyawad.
Thank you.